Is Alien Romulus worth your time and money? That's what we're going to be discussing today. I'm just back from IMAX to see if this is the film we're all hoping for or just another formulaic space slasher tacked onto the Alien franchise. Let's see what works and what doesn't. Let's get straight into it. Rain Carradine, played by Kaylee Spaney, is an orphan working with her adoptive brother Andy, a reprogrammed synthetic human, at the Colony Jackson Star. After her contract is forcibly extended by Weyland-Yutani, her ex-boyfriend Tyler persuades her to join an expedition to a derelict spacecraft called Romulus and Remus to retrieve some cryostasis chambers so they can escape this planet and go to one with sunlight, essentially, which is 9 light years away. So far they have to go on an extended cryosleep. Now forget about Aliens vs Predator and Prometheus and all this other stuff. This is basically supposed to be sitting realistically between Alien and Aliens. Okay, so forget those other movies for the moment. But Fede Alvarez, helms his 7th installment in the franchise, and he does it with real aplomb. The film looks stunning. Cinematography is fantastic. The budget for this film is $80 million, which sounds like a huge budget. For an action movie, it's not, and for a high-end, big budget Alien movie, it really isn't. So he's actually done really well with the budget he's got. And I think part of that is that he's saved a lot of money through having a cast which is relatively unknown. Kaylee Spaney has just been in Civil War, and I think she's very, very good. David Johnson, who's playing Andy, is also a guy I've never seen before. He's really, really, really good in this. And other characters, again, I don't really know them all. The cast is very, very young, but they all are very serviceable in this movie. Now, the things that really impressed in this film were the details. So the set design is fantastic. All the little things, the practical things that you could go up and touch. It doesn't feel like you're looking at a green screen. It really does feel like large practical sets that have been crafted with a lot of passion. And you can tell they have. Every button, every switch, even the opening sequences, even the noises that you remember of the boot up sequence in Alien. All of these things are here, present and correct. And they get you straight back into the universe. That's the thing, that it does really make you feel like you're a part of. It's a follow-on to that movie, so you don't feel like it's a completely separate thing in that way, which is a good and a bad thing in a way, which I'll come back to later. But everything, even from the kind of graphics on the screens to the little bobbing toy that you see when she's having a drink at the table with David when we're first introduced to these characters, is again little remember berries and little nods to the other movies. But they are, they look great. So what else works here as well? I think the practical effects. The practical effects here are stunning. Fede Alvarez made a big thing about this in some of the interviews, saying that if it could be made practically, he made it practically. That's down to the facehuggers, and obviously not all of them, because some of them have to be visually enhanced in certain sequences, and also the alien design, which looks fantastic, all the way as gooey and grim and horrific as they are. They look like they are right there because they're right there. So if you ever get a chance to see some of the background stuff in this, which is YouTube is rife with it, and Instagram, you can see some of the animatronic stuff that he's done with the aliens, and it looks fantastic. It really, really does. It makes a big difference, because in things like Alien 3, when we started to veer away from these practical effects, you had sequences where we had the alien running and they couldn't replicate this, so it was CGI'd, and it was the first time you looked at it and went, oh, that's not really there, is it? And when you do that, it immediately, that 1 second of you feeling that, because our eyes can distinguish CGI so easily, it just takes you out of the movie, and you don't get that in this film, which is brilliant. I think Andy, the Seizure Robot 9000, as I'm going to call him, he is also a great addition to this film. I think he adds a level of humanity, even though he's playing a synthetic, because you do sympathize with this character, and it also adds an element of isn't he an evil kind of synthetic, as we seem to be getting with things like Prometheus and the first Alien movies. Okay, so what do I think didn't work here? The script. The script is weak, and it actually really highlights some issues with the writing that no amount of special effects and practical effects can gloss over, unfortunately. It's clunky. There's too many references to the first film and the second film, Alien and Aliens, to the point of you could feel the audience kind of momentarily pause or giggle or say something to each other like, oh, do you remember that line? Oh, do you remember that reference? To the point where I could make a separate video with the amount of references to those previous movies. I mean, I'm not joking. There must be 15 plus. It's absolutely, you know, I get paying homage, but this was I think you're taking the piss, really. Be your own thing. We know we're in this universe. Those other films are 40 plus years old. So we all know the references, but I don't think you need to lean into them so heavily. The cast, I think, is a drawback. I'm not going to say drawback or a weak point, but I am going to say that because the first film, when you watch Alien, you believe that these are miners in space. There's not a huge amount of characterization, but there's charm to everyone. Everyone is individual and everyone is interesting, and they're believable adults. And I'm going to say that again, adults. I'm not really sure. My fear going into this film was that it all looked great, and I tried to not look at as much as possible to not put myself off. But what was putting me off was the fact that the cast looked 18. I'm just not invested in watching a bunch of Gen Zers in space. It's just not that enthralling, unfortunately. It's just, you've got a lot of characters who, if you look at the timeline of Alien, Aliens and everything else, well, post-Aliens, you have characters who are, I don't even know the name of, playing the Sigourney Weaver replacement. And, you know, short hair, trying to be strong, tough, kind of a lead character, and none of them can pull it off because Sigourney Weaver has such magnetism on screen. She's so charming, she's so interesting, and she's so believable in the character role. And you're sympathetic to her situation. She's fallible. She's not this can do anything kind of person that you really root for her. Kaylee Spaney's great, and I think she's fine, but she's just there. You know, she's very, very small as well. So her physicality, again, on screen, she looks very young. And I know everyone's thinking, well, why is that an issue? Well, it kind of is. I want to see adults on screen. This is not a kid's movie. This is, you know, and I know everyone's going to say, oh, but she's in her mid-20s, whatever. But it's she doesn't look it, and no one looks it on screen. So yeah, that for me was an issue. Everyone else again is incredibly forgettable. You know, apart from Andy, the synthetic, everyone is incredibly forgettable. I mean, I don't know anyone's name. So all that's happening is you've got just a load of people lining up to be, you know, alien fodder, essentially. There's a scene coming, and it's not a spoiler, but I'm gonna warn you now, you know, fast forward if you don't want to hear about it, but there's a scene involving a CGI element with a cast member from the first film, who has passed away. And I can just say, I think it might be one of the worst uses of CGI I've seen for the past decade. It's one of the clunkiest uses of it. It is so... I mean, I actually gasped. I laughed out loud for a second in a quiet theatre, and people, like, you know, I saw heads turning to me because I couldn't believe what I've just seen on screen. Yeah, look out for that, because that is going to really take you out of it when you go. And people who are fans of the original, especially around, you know, people in their late 30s, 40s, 50s, are going to be well aware of what I'm talking about here, because you would have obviously seen the original films many, many times over, because it has such a big loyal fan base and they love them, and I'm one of them. So you know, just let Ian Holm rest, please. You know, you don't need to bring people back. Have someone else there. Have a different robot there. It didn't have to be him. So in summary, I enjoyed elements of this film, and I think it started off pretty strongly. We got the view of the miners working for Weyland-Yutani and what it's like for them, and how brutal the work life is on these planets. But we never really kind of went into any real depth or detail about the characterization of anybody. It's very flimsy, and you don't really give a shit about anybody. And I'm sorry, I don't believe that this far into the future, why the hell are people going into mines with canaries still? What the hell? Breathing problems we have, they have breathing apparatus. I mean, they operate in space. Why are mines a problem now? They mention this several times in the film. Her parents have died from some sort of lung disease from breathing down there. Again, nonsense. We've got cryostasis, so we can sleep for 9 years, but we can't breathe underground. Anyway, it's stupid stuff like this. Now, I mentioned earlier that forget about Prometheus and the other things, but I'm going to have to bring it back because we get reintroduced to the black goo in this. And I'm not going to give any spoilers to it, but it brings in the Prometheus aspect of things and where does this come from and where do the aliens come from. So it adds an element which you're going to have to watch and work out for yourself whether it makes sense or not. It didn't for me. I will have to do another spoiler review of this one because there's too many things I don't want to kind of give away. But you watch that and you tell me if it makes any sense. I think this whole thing with the black goo and trying to engineer the perfect human to work down these mines because they're also dangerous. You've already made androids. You've already made them, which are essentially humans without any of the drawbacks. They are stronger. They can do everything. They don't get tired. So I don't really understand this plot element. So what is this movie? Ultimately, I think it's a serviceable action / horror movie in space. It feels like a Alien and Aliens greatest hits. That's what it feels like. It doesn't feel like its own thing. It leans too heavily into the other movies. It doesn't feel like its own thing, like it's going anywhere. Because it can't, because we know what happens after Alien and Aliens, so we know the timeline. Okay, folks, that's my rant over. I was really looking forward to this, but I kind of, in the back of my mind, knew what we were going to get. It's very difficult, unfortunately, and there's no disrespect to Fade Alvarez, because I think he's done a great job with the way it looks and its cinematography and, like I say, all of the small elements and details that make up a movie. But this film was ultimately let down by a poor script and a weak cast, and a story which, again, it's down a cul-de-sac. It can't really go anywhere. So, would I go and watch it? If you're a big fan of the movies and you just want a night out and you want to go and kill a couple of hours, it's perfectly fine to go and watch. If you're expecting to see anything that's going to blow you away, it's probably not going to be for you. We've seen elements of this for the past 40 plus years, so again, there's nothing that's going to kind of shock you. I would, for the casual viewer, I would wait till it comes onto a streaming platform and watch it there. I don't think it's the best movie out there, even though it's being hyped to smithereens on everything from Twitter to bloody Insta. Okay, folks, if you like this kind of content, please hit the like button and subscribe. It makes a huge difference to the channel and the algorithm, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.